Alrighty, hello everybody. This is our lesson 8, and we're gonna continue to talk about modern JavaScript today. I think the last lesson was more of like a practical example of what we can do with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript combined. And the lesson before that, we kind of dove a little bit into some of the modern JS things like const versus let, etc. So today we're gonna kind of review what we did last week, and we're gonna expand on it a little bit, but continuing on with just modern JavaScript. So, if for those who remember, let's go ahead and switch here. So we worked on this thing that I called box to box, which it was just a red box on the top, blue box on the bottom right, and we made it so that when you click on a box, this little ball goes back and forth, basically from box to box, which is why we called it that. Hold on, let me check this message. Okay, should be good now, right? All right. Anyway, so moving on. I noticed also from the last video that I forgot to zoom in. So if you guys ever notice things like that, please just shout it out. So this was Nora's version of the box to box. So she took that red and blue example that we did and made like these two little characters that when you click on each character, there's a beach ball that goes back and forth. And I thought that was a pretty cool.
Piss ass.
I thought that was a
Sorry,
very
allergies.
cool, way to creatively take that very simple example that we worked on and actually do something that makes a little bit more sense with the animation, right? So today, I figured it would be a good idea to literally expand on this and use modern JavaScript to just kind of change a couple of things around, and show you guys a couple of features that I would have gone over anyway, but now we can actually apply it to the scenery that she made over here. I think that would be a good way to explain everything. So the very first thing I want to talk about is something that I helped her work on yesterday. She was trying to accomplish. So let me go ahead and first and foremost open up her project here. I'm not going to create a whole NetBeans project out of it because it's very small. So I'm just going to open each individual file, which is the index.html, CSS, and the JavaScript. So originally with our box to box example, we only had the ball moving in one direction, right? So I'm just going to comment out a couple of things here real quick. I'm not going to do any of this for now. And then I'm going to leave the bird alone because the bird was something that Nora added on her own. So if I refresh, now we have this ball just going back and forth, right? Kind of like the example that I showed with green and red. So one of the questions and the things that we went over is how do you make this ball kind of whatchamacallit? How do you make it go into like an arc, right? An arc back and forth instead of just going back and forth like this. So you can actually make it look like it's a ball that went up and it went down. So what we did to accomplish that was, there's several ways of doing this, by the way, but like because we're using CSS transitions, let me make this a little bigger. Because we're using CSS transitions to do this, we made it so the transition for the right and the left property is 3 seconds. And then we made it so for the bottom, it's 1.5 seconds. So half the time that it takes it to animate from left to right, it will take it to animate from up to down. So if I go and change, for instance, ball, as we recall, so ball is the variable that got declared for the ball over here. So because it's declared over here, I can reference it on the console just by using ball, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and make it so the ball style bottom equals, and then I can, whatever I give it, right? It could be 500 pixels, whatever, doesn't matter. It'll go up, but it animates in 1.5 seconds instead of 3 seconds, right? So the first thing we did here is make it so when that move ball function, which is triggered by clicking on either square or in this case character, it'll go left and right and it runs this move ball function, right? I'm gonna forget about the bird for now and just focusing on the ball. So the first thing we did is just make it so now you're changing the bottom as well, right? So if you're changing just the bottom, what happens? So now and half the time that it takes for the ball to go from left to right, it also goes up. But now we need something to make it go back down. So then this is what's called an asynchronous function. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about this. So let's talk about what that is. So a set timeout function in JavaScript allows you excuse me, to create a function where you're telling JavaScript like what the delay is between running this function. So if I go ahead and do an arrow function here, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an arrow function. If you have a function that already exists, you could just reference it by name. And I'll show you an example of that today, because we're going to play around with this for a while. And then the time, it's milliseconds, right? So 1,000 milliseconds is 1 second. 1,500 milliseconds is 1.5 seconds, which is what we want that animation to be. So you're doing a set timeout, which is like, I'm not going to actually do anything to the ball yet. I'm just going to show you an example where we can make it so in 1 second we're going to see this console log that says, hi, it's been a second, right? So bam, and then it's almost instant, right? That happens right away. And let me see if I'm doing this correctly. If you don't do your what am I trying to say here? If you do not formulate this correctly, you'll either get an error, obviously, or you'll sometimes see it happen instantly, like if you didn't actually create the thing properly. So again, so it's been a second. Now I'm going to say it's been 5 seconds. So once we press enter, it takes about 5 seconds for us to see that console log. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I counted fast. Where is it? Bam, there it is. So that was 5 seconds. I just did a fast count, right? If I was doing Mississippi count, it would have been more accurate. So that's essentially what the set timeout does, and you specify the amount of milliseconds before it triggers a function, or before it triggers whatever action you've decided to include in the function, right? So again, it's going to be set timeout, and then the first parameter is the function you want to run, and the second parameter is the amount of time. And you can do this with variables. You can do it however you want. If you remember like how all that works with JavaScript, like if we want to set it up like with a variable like delay, right? I'm going to make this 1,500. Because that's how, so I created a variable called delay that's 1,500, and then the function that I want to do is to move that ball. So I'm just going to leave the console log, right? So the function is, hi, it's been 1.5 seconds, right? So this is my function. I can specify the delay variable as the second property here, and it'll go and give me that console log in 1.5 seconds. So by doing this here, we're making it so once you click move ball, it starts the animation to animate it over the bottom to 200 pixels, and then once it's been 1.5 seconds, which is just around the time that animation is going to finish, we set it back to whatever the default one was. So by doing that, now you create this animation where when you click, the ball goes up and then it goes back down. You know, so there's like 2 animations happening at the same time. There's that left to right, and then, well, technically there's 3 animations happening at the same time. So when you click, it starts going from this girl to this girl, and halfway, and then it starts going up at the same time, and then halfway in between, it starts going back down. So that's basically what's going on here, right? So what we're gonna do is simple. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna just kind of like take this bird, right, and we're gonna make it so moving the bird is not going to happen when you click on either girl. We're just going to like create a set timeout that makes this bird kind of like move on its own, right? So right now, the way that the bird is being triggered is we have this, where is it? I'm trying to remember how this is done. 1 second. So we have this flip bird function, and the flip, well, no, this is actually just flips the bird. That's literally what that does. It just changes the direction that the bird is facing. And then let's see. Oh yeah, so move ball moves both the ball. No, so it looks like you're running move ball, and then it moves both the ball and the bird at the same time, right? So we have the bird functionality here. I have an outdated version, I think, of what Nora worked
No,
on.
it's that one's the same on mine. Another.
Oh, okay, okay. So we're gonna take this bird functionality and we're going to make a new function. We're gonna call it like move bird, right? And I'm gonna keep the because we're still using all these parameters here for color. I'll keep color in there as a parameter. And now the reason why I'm separating this function is because I don't want to. I'm gonna call it separately. But just to test here, where we call move ball color, we're gonna just go ahead and say move bird as well, move bird color, and it should do literally the same thing, right? Because all I've done now is just move functionality from one function into another, but I'm calling the function at the same time as I was calling the old function, so it should not make a difference. So when I click from ball to ball, we still have that happening. So the first thing I'm gonna do now is make it so when I click, I'm not gonna make the bird move anymore. I'm gonna copy this. I'll keep it on my clipboard, but I don't want to make the bird move anymore. I gotta refresh. So now the bird flips, but the bird doesn't move, right? So let's make this bird flipping function part of the the move bird. And all I gotta do for that is remove this flip bird here and put it inside of move bird. So now we flip the bird and then we move the bird. Right, so that function is already created. But then when you call move bird now, it'll flip the bird and then move the bird. So right now, because there's nothing calling flip bird, if I refresh and click around, now the bird doesn't do anything. And now I can just manually trigger this by saying move bird, and I think I could do right, and the bird offset right, color undefined. Okay, so I did, something is wrong with how I did this. And I think it's just move bird. Oh, it's color. That's my bad.
You killed the bird.
It's not supposed to be right. It's supposed to be either red or blue. That's how we did it. I forgot about that. So if I do, let me refresh again. So if I do move bird blue or red, it should go to the right now. It didn't go to the right because red is the one on the left. So blue would make it go to the right, and then red makes it come back. Right? Now, I'm not going to change too much of this. I'm going to leave it the way it is, with blue and red being the two things that kind of make the bird go back and forth, right? So blue will make it, I forgot already what it is. I think blue makes it go to the right and red makes it go to the left. It's just how Nora coded this, right? So what I'm going to do now is create another, well, in this move bird function, I'm going to make it so once this bird, and we know that the animation is roughly 3 seconds, right? So I'm going to go ahead and make it a set timeout function here that calls itself. It's going to literally just call itself. And it's going to call itself with the parameter of either red or blue, depending on what the last one was. So I got to do some logic here to figure out like where I want it to go, either red or blue. So I'm going to create a new variable, and I'm going to call that variable next color, okay? And I'll make it blue by default. It means that I want it to go blue initially. And then when we do this, when we run this function, we're going to change the value of that color to either blue or red, depending on what it is. So we're going to say next color is going to equal, if it's already blue, so we're going to say if next color is blue, and modern JavaScript, we're going to do triple equal. So now we're checking. This is just a faster way to make this check, because it first checks if it's a string before it checks the value. So it needs to match both. So it's a little more enhanced way of doing it. And we're going to, every time we're doing comparisons from now on, we're always going to use triple equal or exclamation double equal, because that's just modern JavaScript, unless we have a very, very specific reason why we need to check something without checking the type as well, right? So this Boolean is saying if the next color is blue, then the value is going to be red, otherwise it's going to be blue. So this is very similar to how we're triggering this whole which I didn't talk about, but we'll get there. So let me explain what I'm doing here, okay, just so I'm not confusing anybody. So I created a new variable called next color, and I'm making it blue by default. That's all I've done, right? So let's just focus on only what I'm highlighting and try to ignore the rest of the code. I know it's kind of hard, but let's try to do that. So I created a variable called next color. I made it blue. And then when we run that move bird, which again, remember, right now, nothing runs that move bird. So if I refresh here, the bird doesn't move, nothing happens. I can click on either girl, and I'm getting an error because I probably broke something, but I can click around and do whatever. The bird doesn't move. There's nothing telling the bird to move, right? So we know that the flip bird is going to flip the bird to flip directions. You're right. That's what Nora did. That's what this function here does. I could just take the value of this function here and put it here instead and not have a function called flip bird, but I'm going to leave it there just because, you know, why not? Like, let's pretend like this did a lot more than just the one-liner. I'm just going to actually put a comment here saying could be doing a lot more things in here. So that's why I'm referencing it as flip bird only. And then the next thing we're gonna, so now here, this is like what happens to actually animate it to where it goes. So we already know that. And then the set timeout is kind of like the same thing that we talked about with the ball. This is what makes it kind of move in that vertical direction and kind of look like an arc rather than just moving left and right, right? Again, so if I were to remove that and run it, it'll just go left and right without going up and down. So I'm gonna leave that alone. And this is when I go ahead and apply the whole next color thing. So I'm basically changing the value of next color to either be blue if it was red, and if it's red, I'm making it blue. So I'm basically just toggling it to what it's not, basically. Hope that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, please let me know. So then here, I'm gonna go ahead and do this. I'm gonna call move bird again with next color as a function. But I'm only going to call it, and I did this wrong. This is error function in here, and then I'm gonna call it in. I'm gonna say I'm gonna make it so it doesn't stop moving, right? So I'm gonna do 3,000, so 3 seconds, because we know that the full animation takes 3 seconds. After another 3 seconds, this bird's gonna go ahead and move again to whatever the next color was. Okay, so now we could go ahead and test it. So if I refresh here, make sure that everything else is working. It's not. So let's see what I broke. Okay, so expected expression got parentheses and it says line 34. So I can see all these issues here, right? So there's something wrong with how I wrote this. I can see here. So what's wrong is I have an extra parenthesis here that I didn't notice that my IDE did for me. Now, one way, if you don't feel like spending a lot of time trying to figure out like what's wrong, take a working one, right, that you have, paste it in there, and then just change what you want to change, right? So I know that this is what I want to do, and I know that this is how long I want it to be, and bam. And now that's fixed. So now I click on these girls, the ball goes, the bird stays, and I made it so when I run move bird once, it'll do everything, but then it'll call itself again, changing the color from blue to red. So now if I do move bird, one sec, okay, there, move bird, and then I'll start with blue, which is the first one. It's gonna go, and then when it finishes, it's gonna run itself again with red, and it's gonna run itself again with blue, and that's not gonna stop, because there's really nothing telling it to stop. Every time the function runs, it basically runs again and again and again and again, and the only thing that's changing is the value of the color. So like if I just check what the value of next color is, notice that, whoops, next color, it's blue now, it's red now, and I can keep checking, like, you know, the function is automatically changing the value of this depending on which direction the bird is going, right? So to trigger it automatically now, I'm gonna go ahead and make it so in the end of all of this, I'll just run move bird next color. So I'm manually running it here. Once the script all finishes, I'll run move bird next color. So when we refresh this page, it starts the bird movement on its own. I don't actually have to click on anything. I'm just running the function, and then the function runs, and then when at the end of the function, it runs itself again. So let's make this move a little slower, right? So let's remember how that works. It's 3 seconds because that's how we made the CSS transition work on, or that's how Nora did it anyway. So she has this bird class down here, and we have these animations, and she has right and left going 3 seconds and top 1.5 seconds. So let's double the animation for the bird. Let's make it 6 seconds here, 6 seconds here, and 3 seconds here. And with that, so without changing anything, just the animation, notice that it's going to be kind of screwed up. And the reason why is because it's not going to do what we're expecting, is because we have JavaScript changing things, still using like 1.5 seconds and 3 seconds right in here in the JavaScript file. So let's fix that. Let's make this 3 seconds instead, 3000, and this should be 6000 at the end of the animation. So now if we refresh, now we have a much lower bird kind of going back and forth on its own. And then when it's done, it turns around and goes back. So we're just going to let that bird fly on its own. And now we're going to focus on the beach volleyball and the girl. So right now, we're making it so when you're clicking on each girl, that's what tells it to go either left or right. So we're going to do the same thing that we did with the bird. We're going to actually have this ball do its own thing and kind of go back and forth on its own. So first thing I'm going to do is make this an object now, right? Instead, I don't want it to, because I'm going to use this for both things. So to simplify it, I'm going to say const next color, and then I'm going to make an object where for bird the value is blue, and for a ball the value is also blue by default. Now the reason why I'm doing this is so that I don't have to have like a next color bird and a next color blue. It just simplifies how we access this. And the reason why I made this a const is because it's going to be an object all the time, even though we're going to change the value of the bird and ball property. This variable is going to be an object no matter what. So I don't need to do let. Let is when you're going to change everything about the variable. In this case, we're not going to. So first thing I'm going to do now is fix the bird function to acknowledge these changes. So now instead of next color, I have to do next color dot bird equals next color dot bird blue, red, blah blah blah, and then this should be next color dot bird, and then down here it should be next color dot bird. And let's make sure I got all of that. I should be able to refresh this, and the bird is still moving on its own. Yep, and it goes back on its own. Make sure that still works. Okay, good. So I didn't break anything. I just kind of refactored it a little bit to use an object instead of just a variable. Now the reason why I did that is because now I want to go ahead and do the same thing with move ball. So right now move ball is triggered by clicking. So we have this click event listener that we're doing. Where's it at? Click right here. This we go through both blue and green, and we add that click functionality that tells it to move with whatever color, and we know that we want to do blue first. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to actually remove this entirely, right? So now clicking does nothing, right? You can still click on the ball and the ball does something. I'm going to leave that alone. That's just something separate that Nora did, that when you click on the ball it kind of goes down and up. I'm not going to touch that. I'm going to leave that alone. And now I'm going to make it so instead of clicking triggering move ball, I'm going to move the ball automatically, and I'm going to say next color dot ball, right? So when you start this animation, it'll automatically move the ball. Now again, it's not going to move back and forth like the bird because I didn't do anything to make it so it calls the function like I did with the bird. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to literally copy what I did with the bird here, and I'm going to paste it here on the ball function, but I'm going to change this to ball and this to ball, right? Because we're changing blue and red. It's happening at different speeds. So they have their own variable that'll change at its own times. And then I am, at the end of it, calling this function again. I'm changing this to 3 seconds now because the ball animation is only 3 seconds. And this is going to move ball, next color, ball. So now by doing this, when I refresh this page, the ball starts going back and forth on its own. I don't have to do anything, right? So this animation is kind of happening. Ball's going back and forth. Now I'm gonna add one last little thing. So let's go. So we like what we're seeing, right? let me go ahead and first I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup. I'm going to try, because we see a lot of repetition here, right? We have, this code looks very similar to this code. And in JavaScript, when you're coding something like a product or whatever, we're doing a lot of copying and pasting for the same thing because we're doing the same thing back and forth. I'm going to make this look extremely confusing to you guys probably, but we're going to actually accomplish the same goal with a whole lot less lines of code, right? So we're going to go from top to bottom of this file and kind of like talk about how the structure of a JavaScript file should be. I'm going to explain the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, but in the end, I want to accomplish literally the same thing that we're seeing right here, but with less code. Okay, so for starters, you don't need unnecessary comments, so I'm going to get rid of this, but we know why I did that here, right? I did this here because I do want to keep this flip bird functions as its own function. I don't want to move it, so I'm going to get rid of that. Now I'm going to go to the very top. So what are we doing here? We're assigning const ball, const boxes, ball margin, and then bird. So because boxes is the only object, I'm actually going to move these two variables to go up top, right? So now we have all the declarations that are const declarations up like this, and it's a little, kind of flows a little easier. And I'm going to put the ball and the bird on top of each other like this. So then we have your ball margin, and then your boxes, whatever, and then you have ball drop ball face. Now, when we assign this object, so this is already something that's not really a huge deal, right? But you can do a little bit of simplifying here because you know that red and blue are the only thing that changes on these two lines. I can go ahead and make boxes just an empty object, and then I can use an array of red and blue and do a map to assign the value for the object. I can say, and I'm basically just, and I hope you guys can remember what this means, what I'm doing here, right? But essentially what I'm doing is, this is an array called red and blue, and now I'm just mapping the array where the value of color is going to be red on the first iteration and blue on the second iteration. So now I can say boxes dot color equals document dot query selector, and we want to specify the dot for the class. So I'm going to use the apostrophe, and then I'll do dot, and then I'll use $sign syntax to display what color I want in there, right? So this array essentially, so I'll show you guys what's happening here. So this array essentially creates, like, you know, and I did something wrong, so can't read property boxes colors undefined. So something's wrong with what I did here. Okay, so let's figure out what and fix it. So right here I'm doing an array, I'm mapping to the array, and then I'm doing boxes dot, oh okay, that's what I did wrong. It's boxes color like this, right? Because we're dynamically assigning the value for boxes red and boxes blue to be that, and now I can go ahead and refresh and everything's the same. So it's basically essentially the same. Is this enough of a big deal where you can't just do it the way it was before? No. At the end of the day, lines of code, you kind of like ended up having the same lines of code, right? So it's not a big deal, but that's only because we only have two things, right? Let's say, for instance, we were doing this with like 20 things that were all kind of like the same. Then in that case, you'd be better off listing all those things like this, and then just doing it all in one line of code to assign all the objects, right? So for simplification, because there's only two things, red and blue, I'm gonna leave it alone, and I'm gonna like just leave boxes red and blue like that. I'm not gonna complicate that too much. And then we have this left ball drop and left bird face. We didn't talk about what this means. I'll explain what this means, because this is something I went over with Nora yesterday. So first of all, let's look at what happens without the ball drop, right? So if there is no ball drop, oh, actually, this is the thing that she did for clicking on the ball. So let me actually go ahead and make it so this move ball isn't happening, just to kind of explain what that means, so that we're all kind of following this code and understanding what we're doing. So when you click on the ball, it goes down. If you click on it again, it goes up. So the way that works is you have this functionality here that's basically doing a click listener on the ball, and when you click on the ball, it's going to run this drop ball function, right? And the drop ball function is supposed to change the bottom value of the ball depending on where the ball already is. So what we did, we created a ball drop variable here that starts with the value of false. It's a Boolean, and we make it so now we're going to change the bottom value of the ball depending on whether that ball drop is true or false. So if it's true, we're going to make it use the ball margin variable, which is right here, 40.5. So if it's true, it uses 40.5, otherwise it uses 0. And then right after that, we just basically make ball drop equals the opposite of what ball drop already is. So that's something that is when you're trying to, so say we have const or let switch equals false, right? I'm going to do SW because switch is the switch statement, right? So let SW equals false, exclamation SW is going to be the opposite of what SW is. So if it's false, exclamation SW is true, exclamation SW is false, 3 times exclamation is true, and so on and so forth. By adding an exclamation before something, you're making it the opposite value of what it is if it's a Boolean, of course. So this works for trues and falses, right? So in this case, we're doing ball drop equals the opposite of ball drop. So if ball drop was true, it's now false. If it was false, it's now true. So that's why we're able to click on this ball, and now it knows to kind of, when it's running it the first time, it's false, so it's going to go down to 0. When you're running it the second time, it's true, so it's going to go up to 40.5. And that's basically what that means. Just wanted to make sure that we're all clear on what that is. Anyway, so uncommenting move ball now. So now if I refresh this again, you got the ball going back and forth on its own again. And the last thing I really want to do here to kind of like make this a little more interesting is I'm going to make it so the height of the ball changes all the time, randomly. So how do we do that? So first off, we look at how are we making the height of the ball change. Actually, I haven't finished refactoring this. I'm sorry. Let's finish refactoring this first, one thing at a time, right? So this move ball function and move bird function are essentially the same. The only difference is the timing and the target, right? The target here is either the ball or the bird. So let's make a function that can basically do all of this, but then dynamically change the only things that are different. So this is how the easiest way to refactor something in JavaScript. We're going to literally copy this function here, and I'm going to, just for the sake of this example, I'm going to call it this function object motion. Okay, I'm not going to put any parameters in it yet because we're going to kind of figure out the parameters that we need as we go. So first things first is we know we need the target, right? So ball is the target. We're going to make, so target is the first parameter. So everywhere here where it says ball, I'm going to change it to target. So this ball becomes target, that this ball here becomes target, this one becomes target, this one becomes target, and I think that's it so far, right? Now, how we get the property of next color is also going to depend on what the target is. So how do we actually get the target? It's either going to be ball or bird. So we're going to have to actually make a new object over here to specify the difference between ball or bird. So we're going to say underneath this one, we're going to say const targets plural, right? And I'm going to say ball is going to be ball because it's already there, and bird is going to be bird. So this is the first cool thing about modern JavaScript, right? if you already have, if the keyword and the value are exactly the same, you can get it. The shorthand is you just specify a one time. So we can say ball, comma, bird. You don't need to do, although it would still work by doing this colon that colon that. You can skip it altogether when they're literally the same thing, because you already have a variable called ball and a variable called bird. They both equal what we want here, right? And now this equals the same. And now because this is so simple, we could even simplify it and just make it one line, because we don't need to really make that two lines for something so simple, so basic. And I'm gonna go ahead and put that up here now. So now we have targets ball bird. So target is a new variable where the property ball is the ball and the property bird is the bird. So now I'm gonna actually, because I'm trying to target that actual element, right? The HTML element. Here I'm gonna say element equals targets target. That's a little confusing, but that's targets again is an object that has ball and bird inside of it. And so now in target is going to be either the word, like the string bird or the string ball, right? So now instead of using target here, I'm going to use element. So element.style, element.style, element.style. So that's what we're changing. Now the color is going to depend on what the color is supposed to be. We'll get there in a second, right? So the color is a parameter for move ball, right? So that's another parameter that needs to go in. So target and color. So now color is taken care of as well. Set timeout. This is also supposed to be element here. So there's a couple more things that we need to change so we could do all this in one. But now next color dot ball. So this is going to be next color target equals next color target. So this is dynamic, right? Target is either going to be ball or bird, depending on how we're calling this. So now instead of specifying next color dot ball or next color dot bird, we can say next color open square brackets target to dynamically specify which one we want. So it's either going to be ball or bird, depending on what we pass to this object motion function, and it'll do what it needs to do just fine. And then finally set timeout. So here it calls move ball, right? We want it to call what we like. It's going to be different depending on what it is. So here we can actually go ahead, just to not make things extra confusing, I'm just going to say if target equals bird or ball, we'll start with ball, then move ball next color dot ball. I'm gonna do it this way, and then I'm gonna simplify it again, right? So this is the first version, next color target, right? Because we know that the target is gonna be either ball or bird. Otherwise, and we don't need an else with, because we know our logic. We know that the target's either gonna be ball or it's gonna be bird, nothing else. So else means it's bird. We're gonna move bird next color target. So is there an easier way to do this? And the answer is yes, right? First thing, so we could use the shorthand to just figure out which move function we want to use. So I'm going to put this down there, and I'm going to say const move function. And the move function is going to be if the target is ball, then the function I want is move ball. Otherwise, it's move bird. So what I'm changing now, this move function is basically going to represent either move ball or move bird, depending on what it is. And now I can just call it move function next color target. So that simplifies all of that. And now there's one last thing that's different between, well, there's two more things that's different between these two. So flip bird runs flip bird. So we only want to run flip bird if the target is bird, right? So we're going to put that up top here, and we're going to say if, actually, I'll do it here, it's fine. If target equals bird, then run flip bird. Otherwise, don't do it, right? So if it's ball, this doesn't happen. This only happens if the target is bird. And then finally, another thing that we need to change is the timing function. This is 1500 and 3000, and this is 3000 and 6000, right? So if we want to change this configuration later on, instead of having to go through the code to change it, we can just set the configuration up here. So we're just going to say, I just heard something. Okay, that was weird. I'm just going to, you know what? Let's not overcomplicate this. Let's just go ahead and say timing, right? Or delay, right? Delay is how long the delay is going to be. And we know that no matter what, this delay here is half of the actual delay. So delay is the full delay, so we're going to make this be the full delay, which is 3000. And then this is just going to be delay divided by 2. So delay over 2, right? So we don't have to like specify what we already know. Like we can do that with math. Delay divided by 2 is half of what the actual delay is. So now we have a function called object motion that can handle both move ball and flip bird, right? And then when we do the set timeout, it'll just kind of run whatever that next one is. So now we're going to change it. So move ball, and I'm going to comment this out. I'm not ready to get rid of this yet because we need to make sure it all works. But now move ball, all it's going to do is it's going to do object motion, and it's going to target the ball, and the color is going to be whatever the color that's passed into it, and the delay is going to be 3000, and that's it. And then same thing for this one, right? We don't need the flip bird. I mean, actually, so one thing we could do too, now that I think about it, is we could leave this flip bird here, and we can just not do this, right? That's a little simpler, actually. That looks a lot better. So move bird runs flip bird, and then it runs the object motion, but it's running the object motion for bird, and the delay is 6000 now instead. So it's doing all of this, right? But instead of us having to code all of this stuff that's commented out twice, we can code it once where it'll dynamically pull what it needs to pull. I hope that makes sense. So now what we're going to do is we're going to test it to make sure that that still works. And it's not working. So something's wrong, and this is normal, by the way. Even with all of my experience, it is going to be normal to make mistakes every now and then, and you're gonna have to go back and figure out what the mistake is. So this is a good lesson in debugging. So let's look at what this is. This is probably just a syntax error. So okay, so missing blah 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 function body line 86. Let's go look at line 86 and look at what I did wrong. So this is at the very end. So this just basically means that I left something. So if you're getting like an error with something unclosed and it's the last line of your code, it usually means that you forgot to close something. And that is probably going to be somewhere here. So let's see.
And a semicolon at the bottom of that after the delay, down like 4 lines from where your cursor is.
This?
Down one more. Semicolon after that, no?
No. So okay. You don't need a semicolon after like a function declaration. I mean, you could have it, but typically you don't see it. I think, so this is the problem right here. When I commented out this function, I forgot, I accidentally commented out the function close. So this function starts and it just never ends, which is why we were getting the problem at the end. And you don't need a semicolon at the end of function declarations. It doesn't hurt to put it. I typically don't. It's not really, it's one of those things. It's like you can't have it there. You don't really need it. Like I like having it more in the end of statements. You know, that better practice in the industry. Usually you won't see a semicolon in the end of a function declaration. But every statement line inside of a function, you'll see a semicolon in the end, if that makes sense. All right, so that was our issue here. I commented out this closed squiggly bracket by mistake. So let's go ahead and refresh to see if we have any more errors. Looks like we don't. So this is running just fine the way we did it before. But the main thing that's happening now is we're no longer using this and we're no longer using that, because that's like the same exact code, right? We just made this new function now that handles both of them, where the delay, the color, and the target changes. So that is what functions are mainly used for. Like, you know, you use functions so you don't have to do something multiple times. And the move ball and move bird is essentially the same, but they are what specifies the differences in how that other function should run, right? And then the flip bird, hypothetically, you don't necessarily, like in a real world, if your function only does one line and you only call it in one line, you could just get rid of the flip bird function and just have like that action in there, and save it like that, and it'll still do the same thing. You don't necessarily need a flip bird. I left it there originally just to kind of, because it is, like, again, if that function did a whole lot more things, then it would make sense to do that. But because it's something that basic, you can go ahead and just leave it there. And then the last thing that I'll mention here is, here you have an arrow function that calls drop ball. But since drop ball doesn't have, I'm going to comment this out real quick. So since drop ball, which is this right here, right, when you click on this, since it doesn't have any parameters, right, you can just say drop ball like this and close your add event listener like that. You don't have to do an arrow function if it's not going to have any parameters, and it'll still work the same. So it's just like simplifies it a little bit. The arrow function is like if you actually need to specify parameters to that drop ball and do more stuff, whatever. But you could just tell it which function you want it to run when it's clicked, instead of calling just that function inside of another function, which is essentially what that would be. And then these two lines just initiates the action, right? Bam. You hit that, and it starts going back and forth. Now, I know that, oh yeah, there's the one final thing here, right? So we finished refactoring this, right? So I'm happy with how this is laid out. We start by defining everything, and then we create our functions, and then we make our actions happen. So we have that ball moving back and forth. The last thing that I said we were going to do is we're going to make it so it looks like the vertical motion of the bird broke somehow. And I don't remember why, but you know what, let's go ahead and look at why that's broken. So this happens here, element style bottom 200 pixels, and then element style bottom bar margin pixels. I'm not sure why it broke.
Because the bird goes from the top, not from the bottom, and the element style is going from the bottom with the ball.
So that makes sense, but I don't remember what was the difference between the two functions. So okay, I see what you're saying. So this is bottom. So for the bird, it's top. For the ball, it's bottom. I understand. So I guess one way to fix that is here, where we do element style bottom, we can say if target equals ball, then do that. Otherwise, else do top, right? Or well, there's a better way of doing that too, but 1 second, let me just see. There was something else, and then was that it? Yeah, I think so. I think that's the only difference, right?
That was the only difference, yeah.
Okay, so let's see if just fixing those two things is going to be enough to make this work. So let me actually go ahead and undo. Well, we lost this change here. Let me just make that change back where we're not doing flip bird anymore. And let's go ahead and see if that fixes the bird. No, doesn't look like that's oh, wait a minute. I think I made it worse. Now did I do the opposite logic? Was it ball bottom? Yeah, ball was bottom. Element dot style bottom equals ball margin pixels. Okay, so we extra broke this. Let's see something. So log ball, target. So I'm just like doing this console log to see what's happening, right? So it should be ball, and then here it should be changing the bottom, adjusting bottom, and then here it should be adjusting top. So I'm gonna, just to kind of clarify, I'm gonna start by only looking at the ball animation, make sure I didn't break the ball animation. So I'll comment out move bird and just run move ball. Okay, so move ball is fine, and we're looking here, target ball, adjusting bottom. Okay, that's working as we expect. Now let me reverse this, comment this out, and move just the bird. Target bird adjusting top. Only it's not adjusting the top. And the way it adjusted the top was just by doing, oh, okay, it's more than that. There's also this over here, right? So that's another thing that I kind of forgot. So this also needs to change. So because we're gonna, instead of having two ifs and all that, so here we're gonna say, I'm trying to think of what I can call this variable. So I'm gonna call it top vertical. And this is going to be either top or bottom, depending on whether it's bird or ball, right? So vertical is going to be equal to, so if the target is ball, then the value is bottom. Otherwise, whoops, this is supposed to be that. That is going to be bottom. Otherwise, the value is going to be top. Okay. So now I can take this and say style vertical, which is bottom in this case, is 200 pixels, and then here I could just say element dot style vertical, which is going to be either bottom or top, equals bar margin pixels, just like that, and I could get rid of that else, and that should do it. Let's go ahead and refresh and see if the bird is back to normal. Looks like it is, and now finally we can go ahead and get rid of these because we don't need that anymore. Now that's definitely fixed, and we can make it so the move ball works again. So now when we refresh that, there we go. Now we got the ball going back and forth, and you got the bird. Oh, well, it almost worked. So something's wrong. Something's wrong with the other half of it. So let's find out what. Okay, so let's do it one by one again. So we're gonna just do the ball. Let's see what's wrong with the bird. Was moving fine on its own, back and forth. The ball moves fine on its own. So it's something about both of them running together that something is breaking, it seems. Let's see. And if we move just the bird seems to move back and forth fine on its own. That's interesting, because we're assigning this in a function, so that is an interesting problem right there. Let's go ahead and debug this now again and see what's happening. Ball goes, and then boom. Let's see if we're getting, so the first thing we want to check is see if we're getting any errors at all. It doesn't look like it. Doesn't look like there's any errors. Just for some reason the ball goes up to the sky and turns into a bird, and then the vertical movements kind of get screwed up. So when we're running this, so again, console target, and then we're going to do vertical. So for either one of them, we should see what it's actually trying to change. So
is it because they both use the ball margin? Like there's no actual margin set for the bird?
It shouldn't matter because that's not changing, right? It's just using that value as a reference, but it's not actually changing that value at all. So I want to see, because this looks correct. Like ball is bottom, bird is top, ball is bottom, bird is top, right? So there's nothing really... unless there's something else, like, so it looks like they both start just fine, and then when the ball, so like it's the second part of the function, right, where the ball does drop, but then after the ball gets to here, it just moves all the way up for some reason, and then the bird, I might have the target messed up, and then the bird just never goes back up. The bird doesn't go back up, and then the ball just goes up when it's done. So again, let's move just the ball on its own. Just I could kind of try to understand what's going on. Now, this is good. I think that this is like a good thing to kind of go through together, because if you guys are able to spot anything before I do, that'll be perfect, right?
This shit happens to me all the time.
Yeah, no, but this is very normal. Like, you know, especially when you're trying to kind of simplify something, it all kind of makes sense, right? I am right now, obviously I'm not sure what's going on here, but we will figure this out before the session is over. So it moves on its own, doesn't move correctly together for some reason. So first thing first is I'm going to make them so they move together again, so it breaks. And then I'm going to observe using our console log here, or not our console log, our development tools. What is actually happening? I'm going to stop this console here because that's just that's working as this is as expected. And then we have the set timeout, which is by half, is what sets it back to the beginning. So again, this is the first motion, and this is the second motion. Let's just make sure that they're both correct. So they should say ball bottom, and then ball should always be bottom, and bird should always be top, right? So bird top, ball bottom, bird top, ball bottom, bird top. Okay, that's what we expect, and that's what's happening, right? So now we're gonna actually go ahead and see what quote unquote physically is happening to the ball and why it's doing what it's doing. So let's inspect the ball, and I'm gonna make this just a little tad smaller over here so I can manage it. So it's this div ball over here, and notice the bottom value of the ball is changing, and it should. But what is making that ball?
The ball is going up to 200 pixels, it shouldn't go up to 200, right? Or it shouldn't stay up.
Well, it's from the bottom.
Yeah, never mind.
It should actually, yeah. That is what should be technically happening value-wise, right? So again, like, if we this is an interesting one. I didn't expect that to happen, honestly. That's very, very interesting. So all we're doing here is we watch it go down. Like we watch the bottom value go up to 200 pixels, which is that, and then we watch it go back down to 40, and that's what we're seeing happening back and forth. But even like, let me actually clear my cache here because this is very weird. Yeah, no, there's something really, really, really weird going on with this ball here. But then when I'm looking at it here, I mean, this does not look weird to me. This is exactly what I expect. 40. This is what we coded, right? What's making this ball act the way it's acting right now? I honestly could tell you, I have no clue why it's doing that. It's kind of like if it's okay, I think I see what's going on. It has a top value now. So somewhere along the line, so when you set a top value to it, it's going to go up there. So somewhere in here, we're giving ball a top value, and I'm assuming somewhere the bird is getting a bottom value. No, the bird doesn't get a bottom value, but then the bird... Okay, I think I know what's going on. Somewhere in here, the bird target is changing to the ball target. I'm going to make sure that this is correct. Bird, ball, bird, ball, bird, ball. Yeah, that's what's happening. So the bird code is interfering with the ball somehow, and it's basically modifying the top of the ball, which is what's throwing all of this off. So one more time, we're going to do this, but this time I'm also going to look at what the actual element is. What's the actual element here? This is inside of a function, so they are running independently. They shouldn't really be conflicting with each other. So let me look at console, and ball, bird. You see right here, target bird top, but it's the ball div that's being affected. So question is why? Why is that happening? So when we run the bird on its own, it runs fine, right? Let me actually watch it go back and forth, and the ball doesn't move. So at no point should this happen. Object motion bird, and then element is targets bird. So again, I'm going to say element for target is element. I'm going to get rid of these console logs now. So I'm just looking at when the function starts, element for bird should always be the bird element, and element for ball should always be the ball element. That's what we're expecting. So let's look at that. Element for bird is bird, element for ball is ball, element for ball is ball, element for bird is bird, element for ball is ball. So far so good. Element for ball is ball, bird, bird, ball, 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 ball. Okay, so that's all fine, right? Nothing wrong with that. And then I think it might actually happen during the timeout function. Element seems to be changing, although it really shouldn't be changing, but it looks like it is. Let's see. Ball, target bird, ball, right there. Target bird top, but then it's the ball element. Wait, do we have? Okay, I know what's going on. Okay, I finally figured it out. And this is my fault. Obviously, it's my fault. But so this is the pitfall of when you create variables. You have to be very, very careful with scoping. So I did not say let element, or not even const element, right? I didn't do that. And in this case, this could be const element because this doesn't change, right? But what's happening is because I didn't say const element, it's basically doing var element by default. So it's making this element variable a global variable. So it's basically creating this variable like outside of the function, right? And then it's using the variable from outside of the function. So when they run independently, it works because there's nothing going on. When it runs separately, when the bird one happens, it'll basically override. When the ball happens a second time, which is happening while the bird one is running, it's overriding the element value for the ball, or for the bird, and changing it to ball, and then the bird code is running on the ball. So like I have to do const element, and this is very, very, very simple, basic thing that you gotta always remember to do when you're declaring a variable, is to specify the const or the let or whatever. Otherwise, you might end up with this kind of situation. So now that that's fixed, the problem should go away. So now they should 100% independently move without going crazy. And it's something that basic could kind of throw off the whole entire logic like that. And that's all it was in the end of the day. It was basically, again, like I said, creating this element. So it's kind of like if we did like var element over here and then change this, right? So what would happen is this sets element, but then the ball happens faster, right? So when the ball changes here, element changes on the bird, and then it just does all of this logic over here with the ball instead of the bird, but even though it was running for the bird, if that makes sense. But anyway, now that that's fixed, we can go ahead and do the very last thing, which is going to be quick, I promise. The very last thing I wanted to do to this little example here, and we'll wrap it up for the day on that. But the very last thing I want to do here is make it so the height is a little more dynamic. So instead of just 200 pixels, let's randomize that. Let's make it at least 200 pixels, right? Or actually, let's make it like at least 150 or so, but then add some randomness to that. So very quickly, how do you add randomness to that? So let me make sure there's no more console logs first of all. Okay, I think I got rid of all of them now. Alright, so there's no more console logs here. So math is like a default object in JavaScript to handle math operations. And math.random will always give you a random number between 0 and 1. It'll give you a random decimal. So if we do math.random times, I don't know, 200, or let's go with 400, it's going to give us a random number between 0 and 400, basically, right? And we only want like a whole number, so we can do math.round and then put math.random inside of that. So now we're always going to get a random number from 0 to 400. So now we're going to take the base of this here, and we're going to say const let's say bounce, right? or not, or height. Let's just say height. Const height. Height's a bad word for it too, but whatever. I think you guys understand what I'm trying to do here. I'm just gonna say 150. So this is the minimum plus, and then that random addition, which is literally what we just did here. Math random times 400. We're gonna put that in there. So this is always, so the value of height, right? So if I run this back and over in our console, every time that this runs, the value of height is going to be something random above 150, from 150 to 600 basically, right? It'll randomly pick a value in that every time it runs. So now here where we do element style vertical, we're gonna say, we're gonna do the ticks because we're gonna say height pixels. So it'll adjust, and this is gonna happen for both the bird and the ball together because this is like the same function. So it's gonna adjust the distance from the top and the distance from the bottom, where now they kind of randomly move. The ball is either gonna go higher or the bird is going lower. And that's really the final thing. So like now you see like the ball sometimes go really high up in the air. You know, if you want to make it not so drastic, then you can change this number here to not be 400, make it like 200 instead. So now it's not so drastic, right? It goes up to half the screen or something like that, depending on the size of your monitor. But now the bird's distance down and the ball's distance up is a little more random than just like the same exact motion back and forth. And that's it. You know, that is kind of like all the different things that I kind of wanted to go over. There's one last thing that I will explain, right, that we are seeing here, but I don't think I kind of explained very well, which is when you're doing a set timeout function like this, right, which is the first thing we started this lesson with, this is what's called in JavaScript as an asynchronous function. Because when you're looking at, like when you're writing this script, and I'll kind of show you exactly what I mean, you can write a couple of lines, like you can say like console log 1, just I'll do a count, right, just to kind of make it a little easier to understand. So we're doing console log 1 2 3 4 5, but then well let's make it so the 2 is going to be a set timeout, and I'm gonna put it in here, and the set timeout is gonna be like 1 millisecond. And this is going to say console.log 2. Okay, so because this is delayed, this is asynchronous. This is going to be something that's going to run in the background for a second before it actually triggers the function. So what you expect to see is, you're not going to see 1 2 3 4 5 as a console log. You're going to see 1 3 4 5 2, like that, right? Because the 2 comes in later. It comes in after everything. Even if I did like just a 1 like this, right? So it's like 1 millisecond and it happens instantly. It still happens afterwards because this is happening on its own, like in the background. That's what a set timeout would do. And another example of something asynchronous that you may see with JavaScript is if you're running like an XHR request to pull something from a different website, like, you know, so I think you guys may or may not remember from like the very first lesson that we did talking about socket examples, and I showed you how like you can pull JSON information from a separate website. Anytime you're making an AJAX call or something like that in JavaScript, that is essentially an asynchronous call happening in the background. So every code that you put in between or above and below is going to happen first before that call, that asynchronous call, kind of splits and does its own thing in the background. And then whatever you tell it to do when it's done, it'll happen after everything has happened. This might not mean a whole lot right now, but as we get into more advanced examples down the road, you'll kind of understand why it's important to understand like this order of operations like this, right? Because like, so say for example, I'm trying to do something like I'll do console log 1, but then I'm trying to console log like here I'm gonna say like or I'll say a global variable, right? Like var element equals test, kind of like we just did. Have that issue with a global variable, but then here I'm gonna try to output the value of element. Right now, it doesn't exist over here, So it's gonna, because I mean, it doesn't exist over here after number 4, because even though I declared it here, it's only gonna get declared after a millisecond. So all of this other stuff is gonna run first, and then it's gonna get declared. So if I check it now, it's still not there. But okay, hold on. Var element. There we go. I should do that again, and then I'll do this with just element equals test, right? So now it's undefined, right? It has no value. But now, because it's already ran, if I check it, it's going to be test. And if I run it again, it'll have test now, because the first time I ran it didn't exist. I know that that's a little confusing there, but anyway. So what we went over today was just a lot of what we call refactoring, trying to make things a little bit cleaner, using less lines of code, or what we also call dry code, where like you don't have a lot of the same exact code copied and pasted back and forth, and a lot of modern JavaScript, like these shorthands that you see here. That's modern JavaScript, like using constant lets instead of var, like this example here is going to be modern JavaScript. And then making uses of objects as well, to dynamically pick what you want from an object instead of just creating a bunch of different variables for these things, is also another example of modern JavaScript. And yeah, I mean, that's basically it. So now we're left with this little application where you can click on this ball here, because we didn't get rid of that drop ball. If I can manage to click on the ball, hold on. It's kind of like
Can never catch it.
Yeah, I know. It's like, there we go. I caught it. So like when you click on it, it's gonna kind of go down a little bit. It's kind of hard to click on this ball. It really is. I didn't think it'd be so difficult. There we go. And it'll go down, but it'll still continue adjusting back to like the original position, because of how, if you click on it after halfway of the animation, it should drop all the way down. If you click at it before the animation, it's going to eventually fix itself, right? Because half of the animation sets it to go to where it started, if that makes sense. But anyway, does anybody have, I know this was a lot of information, I get it, but I try to do it with something that you're all familiar with, at least I hope you were, which is like Nora's version of the example that we went over on the last
Dude,
lesson.
Nora's versions is a hard flex, and nobody knows what the fuck's going on.
It's essentially the same. I mean,
okay, the pictures make it look a lot more, because it's not just a and a ball, but the picture is just
Hey,
putting the picture in.
you don't have to explain your flex to nobody. We see what's going on here.
What Nora, what she changed realistically was whoops, that's the wrong file, was the HTML of it all. But as far as like the JavaScript and CSS, none of that really changed at all. Honestly, it didn't. Not even.
I'm surprised she's not sending you prepackaged mills.
That she changes it, but this is a good example of how you can take how this unattached HTML is to JavaScript and CSS, because she was able to just change the HTML of it and do the same thing with the same exact code, pretty much, right? And that's what this is. I mean, but that was like, if you want to call it flexing, sure, but that was flexing HTML more than anything else. JavaScript didn't really change a whole lot, right? But so
every class has to have it. I understand it. I understand where it's coming from.
A little bit of jealousy there. My daughter didn't care. My daughter did the homework. She got the red block and the blue box working. Oh, it works. I'm done. That was it. Didn't even go for the extra credit of making the 4 corners. Nope. It was just done, over, move on. So
hey, wait. You mean like this?
Oh, you're sharing your screen. Let me see. Let me pull it up. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what I expected you guys to do, but...
Oh, look at my volleyball! It's black!
But no, I mean, I think I was actually very happy to see, like, the whole beat scenery, because this is just taking such a simple example that I literally pulled out of nowhere, because I just wanted to think, how can I show you guys something very quickly that combines like all these 3 things that we've been going over the past couple of weeks.
I was just giving Nora a hard time. She
I know.
hard carried me through all this shit anyway.
But no, I'm. So do you guys like again? I'm just gonna go back here. Like, does anybody have any questions at all about any of the things that we kind of went over today? Is there anything that you want me to explain a little differently? Anything that you're confused about, etc., etc.?
Oh,
I got
gee,
more.
my kids are.
What was
I
that?
think so.
I got Nora.
You got Nora. Okay. All right. So I mean, I guess that simplifies a lot. So on the next lesson, we're going to finally kind of jump into the world of npm and Node. Well, npm is just the package manager, but Node essentially is what it is. And I'll just give a very brief description of what that means. So like right now, you've been kind of working with the browser, right? So we usually use our browser's console log to run JavaScript and test stuff, like test one plus whatever. So npm is, or Node, I should say, is kind of like the command line version of how you can run JavaScript. And I'll just very quickly, without going into a lot of detail, show an example. So like this is like a Linux command line. You can do this on Windows as well. It doesn't have to be Linux. But when you have a Node application, let me just kind of go to one here. So I have like this. I think all you guys kind of have seen like the Stark's arc thing that I built, right? That it's essentially a Discord bot that pulls information from Arc to give us information about what the servers and all that stuff, right? So yep. I'll show you what that looks like, and it's actually not going to look very complicated. At least I hope not anymore. I'll just very quickly show you what that looks like. So it's here in my, what is it, servers? No, that's not where I put it. I put it in bots. So it's in bots Discord. Ignore, like, you don't have to like learn how to navigate Linux like I'm doing over here, by the way. But so this is all in index.javascript file that I run here like this, right? And so node.that runs, and then here it says dynamic bot is online and ready for commands. Okay, so I'll show you what the actual file looks like. It's actually super straightforward. I'll go ahead and open file. Just bear with me a moment here. I gotta navigate to where that is. It's on. Oh, come on. Dynamic D. Stark's Discord bot. There it is. Okay, so all that's happening here, right? It looks like may look complicated, but first and foremost, this is all JavaScript. Okay, so I use Discord.js, and I'll explain how this all works in the next lesson, where you can use something created by somebody else. So Discord.js is like the Discord library, to then go ahead and just run JavaScript commands on it, right? And all that's happening here, I'm just going to go down to the part that actually matters, is, where's it at? So these are a bunch of functions that I have to do different things. But the main thing is right here, basically. So we create this bot. Let me kind of go backtrack a little bit. So const bot is new discord.client. This comes from the Discord library, right? So these two lines are essentially the only thing that happens to run the Discord bot. And then here I'll just basically say bot ready. So when the bot is ready, I'll get a console log that says the bot is online and ready for commands. That's what you guys see over here. The bot's online and ready for commands. And then bot on message, this is like message will represent what the message that got sent on Discord was. So then I have this whole who is your daddy check, where like it'll go ahead and check to see if anybody wrote any of these terms over here, which is let me go all the way back up. My bad. It's like at the very top where I says who is your daddy, or who is your daddy, or who's your daddy. All different ways to write who is your daddy. Like, so if you go, I don't even know where this bot is running anymore, but if I were to go on a Discord thing and type who is your daddy, it'll basically go and just, if the check is, so this is just some logic to check if it matches, it'll respond to the person who wrote it with Stone is my daddy, and that's it, right? There's nothing more to it. Then everything else that's happening here, I'm checking out. So if you're in this Discord or whatever, check these commands and then run these commands. Or if you're in the Dynamic DTCG, which is like my other Discord, run these commands. So I run, so I created this bot. I'll kind of just show you a very quick sample of it on my it's basically the same file that runs for both. Like, so on this server here, dynamicdtcg, I go to bot commands and I type "who is your daddy," it'll run that response. There's two. I'm actually running it twice now. That's why I did it twice. So let me close it. It was already running, I guess. I thought it was. Well, I just edited the message. Yeah, so it's the same code essentially. And then like if you look for something like this, it'll go ahead and give you information on what that card is that it pulls from the server. But all of that is basically just JavaScript running on Node, essentially. And I think that what we'll do is we'll create like a very quick example of like how you can write a Discord bot that gives you, like, I don't know, maybe if somebody tweets something on Twitter, it'll go ahead and post it to your Discord or something like that, right? Just so you're interfacing with Discord and Twitter APIs through a Node mod. And you can do that with a web page as well. The only difference is if you're doing it on a web page, you have to have the web page running in order for it to work. Where if you're doing it with Node, you can kind of like just leave it running in the background. And if you have a server set up like I do, you can make it like, or even on Windows, like you can go to your command prompt and run your code and leave it running and just minimize this, and that'll be your server running in the background doing whatever it is that you coded it to do, right? But in the end, if you look at the code, which is really what I'm trying to show you, I mean, we talked about, this is a function. You guys know what a function looks like. This is returning true. You guys know what that means, or you should anyway. This is just a switch statement. It like checks the command and runs the different functions depending on what the command is. Like if it's execute alarm, you guys might remember what that is, like when you set an alarm for yourself, right? So if you set an alarm for yourself, it'll run this execute alarm, which will then validate the command and make sure that the command is written properly. Otherwise, it'll send this information over to the server, which stores that alarm, and then the server is a whole other code that also goes and does more stuff. And I wrote that version in PHP, so we're not going to go over any of that, but it saves this information on the server, and then the server triggers it whenever it's time to trigger the alarm. And that's basically it. And then that's it, really. I'm not gonna dig into that because that's more for next lesson. But we'll go over some examples with Node for the next lesson. Now we're literally at an hour and a half, so
here, hold on.
Wrap it up here. You got a what?
I got a separate question that's probably
Okay.
going to be on like a different lesson.
Okay, go ahead.
With like, go on Nora's thing.
Okay, let me close this. Go ahead.
So I'm assuming with that she like found a picture that she liked and then stuck it on the background for that.
Yeah.
So can you do like the same concept and like make the background treadmill effect?
Treadmill effect.
Like, can you make a function where it would like bind the key to like right arrow, left arrow, make a ball, and then essentially make like a geometry dash where like when you press right arrow it would like old Mario game it and like bring the ball and like move the
Oh,
back.
I see what you're saying. So you're saying like essentially making a game, like, where
Exactly.
the background kind of moves along. Yeah, I mean, you could definitely do that. I mean, what HTML games like that are typically made on Canvas rather than using CSS, just because Canvas is a little fast. It's still HTML. Like, if you are interested in like learning it, I'm not gonna go over Canvas at all in any of these lessons because for web development in general, you're not gonna use Canvas, like unless you're doing something very specifically. But Canvas is a better option for doing something like that, where you're like editing geometry within So Canvas is an HTML element, where inside of the HTML element you can have geometry. Like you see, this is draw a line, so this shows an example of drawing a line. But you can animate all that geometry inside of that element, and it's a lot more responsive. So like if that game that we played called Agario, that's all Canvas, right? Like moving the little. So a lot of if you talk about gaming with JavaScript with like web-based technology, Canvas is really where you want to go if it's very animation heavy. But can you do it with CSS in HTML? Yes, you can. Like, it's definitely possible to do it. Yeah, for sure. It's not practical, but it's possible.
Yeah, it would just be more necessary than using this.
Yeah, like I would think of more using the knowledge, and I know that when you see something like what Nora was able to create with the beach thing, is the brain usually goes to games, because now you have what the hell just happened here. I'm just gonna refresh and pretend I didn't see it. so what happens here is like you want to think of HTML, CSS, JavaScript combination as to more for applications, right? Like so think of applications where users might want to be doing something or getting some kind. You get what I'm saying when I say applications. Like think of phone apps and stuff like that. When games definitely are going to be geared more with depending on what the game is, of course. Like if it's a card game, there's no reason why you shouldn't do that with just HTML, CSS, excuse me. But like a Mario RPG game like that, that's very, very responsive to your input, I would say Canvas is a much better alternative. Like like you can look at games with HTML Canvas. There's a ton of games created using HTML Canvas. So like if you look at a list of like popular games that use HTML Canvas, you'll get an idea of what the limitations are, for that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I hope that answers that question. Does anybody have any other questions? I'll take that as a no. So we'll wrap up for the day here, and I think that we're slowing down a little bit to doing just Thursdays, and I kind of understand, especially now with like COVID slowing down, like people want to do stuff on weekends. Don't really blame anybody.
Who does stuff on weekends?
For now,
Who does stuff?
Who the fuck does stuff?
I mean, I don't know. We canceled like the past 2 Saturdays in a row. And the last one was for me because I had like scheduled to go out and do stuff with my family on that Saturday. I don't think I'm going to be doing anything this Saturday. So if you guys want to still shoot for Saturday, and then just if it doesn't work out, we'll just move to
Well, I'm
Thursday.
down. I mean,
as usual.
I'm still down with this Thursday. I don't care. I'm not trying to. I'm just letting you know that that's fine with me.
I think next Thursday I'm not going to be here because I'm working night. Well,
Okay.
night. I have a jetter job.
Oh, it's nice to see you guys back. Like we were like had a running joke in the last one. I think me and Scope said, and then there was 2. And then when he told me he wasn't going to be here for today because he had something planned with his girlfriend, I'm like, well, then there was 1. But you guys came back,
no,
so that's pretty cool.
I was here last one.
Well, you were and you weren't. I mean, you kind of popped in on your phone. Didn't really.
No,
say
I
much.
was here. No, I was here the whole time. I was.
Oh, were you? I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, I was still like dealing with shit around my house, but I was sitting here listening. Was wearing my headset. Stop.
All right, I do. Okay, I'll have an offline question. I'll have to get off the air, but let me go ahead and sign off here. Again, thank you guys very much. This was lesson number 8, and we'll wrap that up over here. Going offline.